Welcome to the Putback with Ian Begley. I'm Chelsea Sherrod, of course, with SNY NBA insider Ian Begley. And today we are joined by CP The Fanchise for our trade deadline special. CP, so great to see you. Shout out to Knicks Fan TV, where we are also streaming live as well. I know you two are having a very busy day, very busy week. We have so much to get into. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about all things Knicks and around the NBA. Let's get started with the baseline, though. Two big stories of the day, guys. The Knicks trade for Jose Alvarado, and Deuce McBride will have surgery tomorrow to repair a core muscle injury that could keep him out until the playoffs. So, Ian, let's start with Deuce. We thought that this was an ankle. Now it comes out that it's his core. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are shocked to hear this news. Can you just take us through what happened with Deuce?
Absolutely. But first, I want to say I'm happy we got LinkedIn CP today. It's always a good day.
You see the fit?
Thank you, CP.
Good.
Yeah,
Good
strong. So yeah, it was ankle soreness that they were trying to deal with, and this core thing. I think there was an examination, by I don't want to say second opinion. Maybe it was a second opinion, but whatever it was, this was found, and it surprised players. I'm sure it surprised the Knicks organization because it wasn't something that had been, flagged by trainers or anything like that. And it was caught here, and the decision was made to have surgery. So obviously you can't overstate how damaging or important how important McBride was to this team and is to this team. So the hope is that he's back by the postseason. It's a tricky surgery, and it's rough for the Knicks. They had a good news, bad news day.
Yeah, I mean, Deuce is obviously their top option on the perimeter. He's averaging just under 13 points per game and averaging career high 28 minutes per game. So CP, to Ian's point, how big of a loss is this for this Knicks team?
It's no doubt a tough loss. And like Ian, when I had heard the news that Deuce was seeking multiple options in terms of his injury, it didn't sound too good. And so to hear this news now, it's a tough setback for a guy who is having a tremendous season for the Knicks. His shooting efficiency from three, as you had noted, and every year you've seen Deuce mature and develop into a priority piece in this rotation. And it was unfortunate because I had spoken to Deuce over the summer in terms of what these injuries, how much they set him back. Because remember, last year he had a groin injury and a hamstring and things of that nature. So it's tough to come back from those. But for the Knicks, number one, if we look at last night, a player who has emerged from his injury, that is Landry Shamet. And he had 16 points in their win over the Nuggets. You know, Landry Shamet being one of the best three-point shooters in terms of accuracy right now. And so they should be able to maintain their position with Landry Shamet in that rotation. And then you add in a guy like a Jose Alvarado who's going to bring in a much-needed depth and insurance piece. So this Knicks team, while the Deuce loss is certainly a setback, you hope that he can make it back in time for the playoffs. The Knicks now have guys who can step up in his absence.
Yeah, really great point on Shamet by UCP. Really hoping for a swift recovery for Deuce. But let's move along to Jose Alvarado. So last night, the Knicks traded Guerschon Yabusele to the Bulls for Dalen Terry, which they then used Terry and 2 second-round picks to trade for Alvarado earlier today. Ian, you've been mentioning Alvarado on the putback since December. How did this all finally come together?
Well, with Yabusele, everybody around the league thought the Knicks would have to attach some draft compensation to Yabusele in order to move him to another team. What happened, though, was Chicago, with all the moves that they made, they were left without many big men and with a need. And they targeted Yabusele. And so Knicks were able to make that trade 1-for-1, not have to include any draft compensation, which, again, surprised a few teams that I talked to today. And then you move on to New Orleans and you try to work out something for Alvarado. I think that the hope was that this was going to happen, and I don't want to say they were confident it was going to happen, but they were hopeful because this is who they had targeted for a long time now. And if you remember back in training camp, Knicks had Malcolm Brogdon, the veteran point guard, in camp, and I think the plan was for him to be on the roster. He obviously retired before the regular season, but that tells you a little bit about what they were looking for with the backup point guard spot. They've got it now in Alvarado. Obviously, tenacious, energy, very good defender, a place where the Knicks, obviously, they've been playing well on that end, but you can never have enough strong defenders. I just think about Alvarado, Shamet, and Mitchell Robinson as your reserves, and those are strong defenders that you have off your bench.
Yeah, Alvarado can definitely provide some on-ball pressure. I know that there's more of a spotlight on this move given the Deuce McBride news, but CP, is this a move that you were hoping the Knicks would make before the deadline?
Yeah, for sure. Just in terms of the assets that the Knicks had to work with at this trade deadline, this was one of the margin moves that I expected the Knicks to be heavily favored in winning. And in Jose Alvarado, they get a scrapper. He's going to be able to fight from 94 feet. And when we recall, if you go back to their Eastern Conference Finals matchup against the Pacers, that's part of their strategy in terms of wearing down Jalen Brunson, throwing defenders at him in waves. And so Jose Alvarado fits that bill. His steal percentage has been one of the tops in the NBA since his rookie season, 7.9 points per game, 3 assists per game, shooting 36% from three. And I'm sure that returning home to Madison Square Garden and injecting that rotation with some energy, I think he's going to be rejuvenated for this team. So it was a good pickup, a depth and insurance piece, and I'm ready to see what he's going to look like in the Knicks uniform.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this homecoming plays out for him. But Ian, can you tell us a little more about the financial ramifications of the deal? Alvarado holds a $4.5 million player option for next season.
Yeah, friend of the show, Yossi Goslin, all over it. You got to follow him on Twitter at Yossi Goslin. He says that the Knicks actually saved close to $1 million with both transactions here, and they can now sign a player off of waivers. They have enough room to be able to do that, enough room between the second apron and where their team salary sits. And before these moves, they were going to have to wait till April 2nd to sign that kind of player. So they've opened themselves up here, and that $4.5 million player option is important. I mean, if it gets picked up by Jose Alvarado, then the Knicks, in an era where every dollar counts, they have a strong rotation player on the books for that number, and that would just help them have more financial flexibility to, let's say, re-sign a Mitchell Robinson or maybe extend a Deuce McBride.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Ian, quickly, are there any names that stick out to you as to who they could sign? I know you talked about, potentially re-signing Deuce or Robinson, but are there any other names that come to mind?
In terms of the buyout market, I don't know. In terms like Larry Nance Jr., I'm not sure what's happening with him, but I just wonder if there's a veteran big that the Knicks could bring in just as insurance with, Mitchell Robinson, Karl Anthony Towns, Ariel Hukporti playing really well. But I wonder if that's in the cards. You also have to think about Miles McBride. Like the surgery is, it's not nothing. And so do you look for an insurance there in the backcourt? And so I don't have any specific targets at the moment, just areas of the roster where they were looking to bolster via trade or otherwise.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. CP, you mentioned it, Jose Alvarado is a Brooklyn guy. So how do you think he'll fit into this roster and playing at the Garden? What kind of a difference does that make for a player when you can now play at home?
As compared to New Orleans, I think it's going to be night and day. And no offense to those people, nice city, and I'm sure very nice people, great food over there. But for Alvarado to play in the Mecca and the world's most famous arena, I think you're going to see it from day one. I'm very interested to see the rotations that Mike Brown is going to deploy with Jose Alvarado in there. As Ian mentioned, it could be a Landry Shamet, Mitchell Robinson. If you can envision a trio of Alvarado with OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson there, the Knicks' ability, you're seeing their defense really step up in terms of their intensity and their turnover percentage. So I think he's going to fit right in. And look, we saw some really positive output and production from Tyler Kolek this year. He's had some highs and lows. His biggest highs was certainly the Christmas Day game, the NBA Cup. He's given the Knicks a lift as a playmaker, but I wasn't too sure if the Knicks were going to be able to trust Tyler as to their lone backup point guard, especially going into a playoffs with a team that has championship aspirations. And so the depth is going to be needed, but on the defensive side, I think he's really going to get after it in the Garden.
I agree. Just if you're all just now joining us for our the putback trade deadline special, the trade deadline has officially passed, so we are just going over all of the moves that the Knicks have made up to this point. Ian, how impressive is this move in bringing in Jose Alvarado? How impressive is it from the front office, only really giving up 2 second rounders for him?
Yeah, I mean, just based on what the expectation was going into this thing with Gershon Yabusele and the player option that he has for next year, the assumption was that the Knicks were going to have to add picks. And so to avoid that, I think is a shrewd move. I mean, I think the Chicago situation really fell in the right way because they needed a big guy. I don't think this was the case before these trades that this was going to happen. So things breaking right for the Knicks, but also credit obviously to the front office for jumping on it and finding a pathway that really no one thought would be there throughout the whole lead up to this trade deadline. And so, yeah, to get off of Yabusele, no picks, you're getting off the player option for next year. So you're clearing your books in that regard, and you're bringing in the player that you had targeted all along here. I mean, yes, it's a strong day. Let's see how Jose Alvarado impacts things on the floor. I don't think you could celebrate anything today, but just in terms of the machinations and the draft compensation, very strong, much less draft compensation than other teams that expected the Knicks would have to give up.
And speaking of how he can impact things on the floor, CP, how does Alvarado fit into this rotation, especially without Deuce McBride in this lineup until potentially the playoffs? I know it's not an exact replacement of Deuce. Sure. Alvarado is shooting about 36% from three so far this season. I believe that's a career high. But what do you think he will do in this rotation?
Yeah, similarly to Deuce, 3 and D. That's where Alvarado will shine. That's where a lot of his shots come from. A good majority of his shots will come from three-point land. And the way that the Knicks have been able to spray the ball, they're playmaking for each other, and they're really feeding off of their defense as of late, I think he'll fit in quite well with this team and build chemistry with those guys quickly. We saw the tweet from Josh Hart. He seems to be anticipating playing with Jose Alvarado. Josh Hart is a guy who I look at him as their point guard in transition. So those two guys could be interesting to see how they operate out there on that garden floor. So I think Jose Alvarado is certainly going to bring an interesting dynamic to this team. And as Ian said, one of the wins for this front office, you have to give them credit for being able to get out from under the Yabusele contract. And they found a willing buyer in the Chicago Bulls, a team who many question what they're doing in terms of their offseason moves. So to be able to trade Yabusele without parting with their second-round pick and then rerouting Dalen Terry to the Pelicans, that's the type of chess moves that Brock Aller and Leon Rose that they make. They're always 2 steps ahead in the moves that they make, and this is another win on the margins for this team, in my opinion.
Yeah, let's get into Yabusele just a little bit more. Ian, why do you think Yabusele wasn't able to find time in this rotation? It just seemed like it wasn't the right fit for him with the Knicks.
If you look at the timing, Mike Brown was not hired when they signed Gershon Yabusele. So it turned out to not be a good fit with the head coach and the way he wanted to play. And, what he wanted Gershon to do in his offense was much different than what Gershon had played in earlier and what he'd have success in. And so, it was just a bad fit from that perspective. And, Jordan Clarkson, maybe Jordan's role changes now with the Deuce injury, but he had been out of the rotation. He had some DNP, so that also seems to be not a great fit. And look, you never want your top signing for an offseason to work out as poorly as this one did. And I think everybody was disappointed with how things had gone because I think there was high hopes on both sides. Yabusele was excited to be in New York, and so now he turns the page, but you do get off of him without having to give up picks, and that to me is significant.
For sure. He did post a message on Instagram saying, New York, I imagined our journey differently, but in an athlete's life, things don't always go as planned. Still, I'm grateful for every moment wearing this legendary jersey. Thank you to the staff, my teammates, and the fans for the support and energy. Wishing you all the best moving forward. CP, to that end, how do you view Yabusele's brief time in New York?
Rough, rough. But when you go back to the offseason when they acquired Yabusele, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that was really against this deal. It would seem to be a good win for the Knicks because he was coming in shooting a career high 40% from three. He has numbers in transition was excellent. He had a good run in the Olympics as well, and so he was on the upward trajectory. But I just think there was a combination of things that really did him in. As Ian said, they signed him without a coach in place at the time. That should have been a bit of a red flag. Additionally, his fit with Mike Brown's system just wasn't the right one. And he did make a comment on the Knicks Fan TV Instagram agreeing with the fan comment in that regard. So it seems like Guerschon Yabusele did not feel like he was suitable for Mike Brown's system. In Philadelphia, he had a lot more minutes and a lot more opportunity to get his offense and build up in terms of usage. He was a pick and pop player. He was a guy that they would dump it down to when they would get into the cross matches and find him on a smaller player. But for the Knicks, in his slot, they really need someone who can be a bit more efficient with their minutes, someone who can impact winning without necessarily being able to just shoot threes. And with Yabusele, there was a case to be made that maybe he was not in the best shape. His defense was not 100%, and also from three, he wasn't shooting the ball well. All in all, though, I thought he handled the adversity and the challenges here very well in a professional manner, as you see by his message leaving New York and heading to Chicago. And according to the reports, the Bulls value him and intend to keep him. So hopefully he's able to extend his NBA career in Chicago as well.
Yeah, wishing him all the best with the Bulls. One small move before the deadline, though. The Nets are waiving Cam Thomas, according to Shams Charania, so allowing the scoring guard to enter free agency. Ian, could this be a potential pickup option for the Knicks?
Just looking here. Yeah, I think that with Cam Thomas, I think he wanted a place to play, obviously, and that's why his agency pushed to get moved before the deadline. There was nothing there, so the next move was to waive him. Is he an option for the Knicks? I just don't see it, but I haven't asked anybody because it just happened. But I don't see it. Just given such a talented scorer, incredible scorer, but on the defensive side, teams kind of question how effective he could be there. So I don't see it right now. They do have the opportunity to add somebody. They have the financial flexibility, but I'd be a little surprised if it was Thomas.
Yeah, Cam Thomas averaging 15.6 points per game this season. CP, any thoughts on Cam Thomas that you have?
A bucket for sure, but someone who even coming into the NBA out of LSU, just his fit, they were, whether you want to say it was a character flaw, things of that nature, just had some tricky history coming into the NBA. And so I don't think he's a fit here for the Knicks per se. But I'm kind of surprised that the Nets ended their relationship here by waiving him, and hopefully he can rebound. Maybe it's somewhere. Maybe it's the Rockets. The Rockets were a little bit quiet here at the deadline, the Timberwolves did go out there and get Ayo Dosunmu. I thought that was a big pickup for them when they needed some guard help. So it'll certainly be interesting to see where he lands, but I'm not quite sure it'll be a fit here with the Knicks.
Yeah, we'll see where his new home will be. Before we get into a little around the league and more importantly, the new Eastern Conference, let's just hit quickly on what the Knicks have been doing on the court. So last night, the Knicks made it 8 in a row after their double overtime win over the Nuggets. Jalen Brunson, a near triple-double, goes for 42 points, leads the charge. Ian, what have been your biggest takeaways from this Knicks winning streak?
Yeah, defense. You knew if you were watching this team during that 2-9 stretch, the defense was not good, and so they've really flipped it on its side. And I think they give credit to the adjustments that were made. They talk about Brendan O'Connor, defensive coordinator. They talk about Darren Erman in terms of making those adjustments. They had a couple days to practice prior to this streak, or at the beginning of this streak. I think that made a big difference for them. And so you're seeing the fruits of those practices on the floor, and it just looks like such a different team defensively. I don't know how sustainable it is. I know that the Knicks, many of these games were not against the NBA's best offenses, but I think they have a blueprint here to at least be much more competitive than they were during that 2-9 stretch. And I think that is significant for the group going forward.
Yeah, holding 5 of their opponents at or below 100 points. CP, what's your biggest takeaway during this 8-game win streak?
Likewise, it's the defense, and from the top down, starting with the captain, Jalen Brunson, one player who I said was going to win the Knicks Defensive Player of the Game award, the prestigious Timberland boots and construction hard hat. I told my castmates that he was going to get it, and he did get it in the win over the Washington Wizards. But that's Jalen Brunson just leading by holding himself accountable and then leading by example. That loss to the Mavericks on MLK Day was an embarrassment to this team, to this organization, and for the fan base that paid to watch that. I was in the building for that. And so give credit to these players for holding themselves accountable and leading with their effort first and foremost. But Mike Brown also simplifying things defensively to make things a little bit easier for guys like Jalen Brunson and some of the Knicks on-ball defenders. You can see the results are paying off right now on the court. And then also Mike Brown's adjustments in late games. You're now seeing late game situations where he's opting to close with Mitchell Robinson at the 5 if Karl Anthony Towns is ineffective, or to get a little bit stronger around Jalen Brunson there to close out games. But overall, the defensive intensity by these guys has been commendable. Landry Shamet, OG Anunoby has been outstanding. So let's see if they can continue as the competition increase. They have a dogfight, and the gauntlet continues starting Friday with the Pistons and then Sunday against the Celtics.
Yeah, just a big credit to the way that they've been able to respond, because we know there's going to be ebbs and flows of a season, and that's what the players were telling us when they were going through that 2-9 stretch. But the way that they responded, especially to that MLK Day game, CP, as you mentioned, I think is very impressive and shows what they're made of. Last night's win, the Nuggets big man Nikola Jokic complimented the defense of Mitchell Robinson. Fun fact, Mitch is the only guy from the 2018 draft still with his original team. That's kind of mind-blowing. But CP, your thoughts on Mitchell Robinson and what his future could look like with the Knicks?
I call him the last man standing from that 2018 draft class, the elder statesman of the Knicks. And in an era where there's constant movement, constant player movement, it's a testament to Mitchell Robinson's value to this team. And you can't lose him. They cannot afford to lose Mitchell Robinson, what he brings to this team as an offensive rebounding machine. And now, if you look at the way that he played against the Nuggets last night, yes, Nikola Jokic still got his numbers as the MVP. But as you said, Jokic was very complimentary of Mitchell Robinson in terms of how he defended him. And Mitch, he looked the best that I've seen him look in quite some time in terms of his agility, in terms of his anticipation, cutting off drivers, meeting them at the baseline. And late in that game, when the Nuggets would go into their patented two-man game between Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, Mitchell Robinson held it down. He allowed Nikola Jokic to get those threes. We'll take those. But when he got switched out onto Jamal Murray, he blocked a three-point attempt, and he didn't allow Jamal Murray, who started the game off hot, to continue to cook the Knicks in the fourth quarter. I thought Mitchell's defense was excellent, and rightfully so. He did take home the defensive player of the game after the Knicks win in double overtime.
Yeah. Ian, what are your thoughts on Mitch, especially after last night?
I mean, he's been fantastic. And, you know, I asked him a couple of games ago about the Knicks medical plan, the idea that he'd sit, some games when he's healthy in an effort to keep him on the floor, especially for the playoffs. And he said that, he had to put his ego aside. He wants to win. He wants to play. But he put his ego aside and bought in, and it's a plan that's working. And obviously, a healthy Mitchell Robinson changes a lot for the Knicks. It changes how opponents game plan for the Knicks. So if you can keep him healthy, clearly you're a different team. Clearly you're a better team. And that Karl Anthony Towns, Mitchell Robinson center duo, I mean, you talked about it, CP, the Denver win. Both of those guys I thought contributed in a big way. And if you're going to get anything near that consistently from both of them, you might have the best center depth in the league.
Yeah, you can just see how much more confident Mitch looks out there, too, when he is healthy. Let's go around the league now. We went this long in the show, guys, without talking Giannis Antetokounmpo. So let's get into it. Giannis will stay in Milwaukee for the rest of the season, and the Bucks instead will look to build around Giannis. So, Ian, I'll come to you first. What are your thoughts on the Giannis situation?
Yeah, it was going to take a big offer for ownership and the Bucks to agree to send Giannis out. I thought kind of from the beginning that this was going to be about Milwaukee and gauging the market. I thought maybe Minnesota could jump in there late because of their ability to acquire first-round picks, but it didn't happen. And so now Milwaukee has a very good intimate knowledge of the market for Giannis. Clearly, they've decided that they can do better in the offseason. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if they take a swing at keeping Giannis. Now they have these draft picks, and who knows how long Giannis is going to be out for. Maybe they start playing for the draft, and then you have a very good asset to work with because this is a very good draft. So I wouldn't rule that out, but I do think the odds are that we're going to be right back here around the draft with Milwaukee, sorting through offers on Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, the Bucks instead trading for Nick Richards and Nigel Hayes-Davis from Phoenix, and they get Cole Anthony and Amir Coffey. CP, what are your thoughts on the Giannis situation?
Yeah, well, I've been saying for about a couple of weeks now, I've got Giannis fatigue because it continues to be this stalemate that with no conclusion in sight. However, if there are people out there that are Knicks fans that want to see Giannis with the Knicks, I think this was a big win for them as they head into the summer, because with the Knicks being able to part with their future 2033 draft pick and as well as the 2026 pick, that allows their package to be a little bit more enticing for the Bucks. And Mark Stein did come out with a report earlier this week that said the Bucks are intent on sending Giannis to where he wants to go. So could this stalemate here at the deadline indicate that he's still waiting, holding out hope to come to New York? I think that'll be left to be seen, but certainly this is a win for the Knicks. The fact that he had not been traded, they did not go out there. There was rumors about John Morant. They did not go out there and pick up any caliber players to help him in his playoff or championship cause. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle the second half of the season with him. Do they shut him down with the calf injury? Do they give him a farewell tour? Will be interesting to watch nevertheless.
And just a quick update here. The Bucks did trade for Nick Richards, but Nick Richards is now on the move once again, going to Chicago in a 3-team trade. All right, let us go talk about the new East. I want to get your thoughts on the moves that have happened in the Eastern Conference and how it impacts the Knicks. Let's start with the Pistons. And CP, I'll come to you first on this one. So the Pistons acquire Kevin Huerter, Dario Saric from the Bulls for Mike Conley and Jaden Ivey in a 3-team deal with the Timberwolves. What do you think of that move?
Yeah, it's an interesting pickup. The Pistons had been looking for shooting depth to add to their roster. Now, Kevin Huerter Jr., he's only shooting about 30% from three. Hasn't really had the career that many expected him to have after coming out the gates hot with the Hawks. Many remember him kind of torching the Knicks in that 2021 playoff run. But since then, moving on to the Kings and now to the Bulls as well, hasn't really been the player that many expected, but we'll see if he regains form playing with a dynamo at the point guard position like a Cade Cunningham. Our guy, Yossi Goslin, as Ian said, doing great work. He noted that maybe it's the pick swap for the Pistons with the Bulls that was the most enticing part of the deal, because it allows the Pistons to move up a few draft slots in this coming draft. So maybe they add another young player in a draft that many believe will be filled with good young prospects. So, it's a good depth addition for them, and with the addition of Saric as well. But look, the Pistons are already a strong team, being the number one team in the East. And you look at all the lottery picks that they have been able to draft over the last few years. To me, those are the biggest upgrades in terms of their ability to be a championship contender, starting from Cade, Ron Holland, Asor Thompson, Jalen Duren, you name it. All their first-round lottery picks have really taken another step up.
Let's switch over to the Cavs, sitting at 4th place in the Eastern Conference. They acquired James Harden from the Clippers for Darius Garland, also acquired Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis, and gave up DeAndre Hunter. Ian, any thoughts on this trade between the Clippers and the Cavaliers?
Yeah, look, James Harden, he obviously is going to tilt things. He's going to make that Cavaliers team better. Is it good enough now? Clearly it's a better team, but is it good enough to now perform in the playoffs at a level that it hadn't? Harden, he's had his issues in the postseason as a performer, especially in big games. Maybe he can shake that off. But to me, this was a smart move by Cleveland with the injury issues surrounding Darius Garland and Harden's availability, you jump on it because I think that there's, I don't want to say pressure to win, but the idea that they won so many regular season games and then didn't advance in the playoffs, I think there is maybe a push to make yourselves a deeper playoff performer, because I think, you know, the ownership and the money that's being spent, I do think that there's a little bit of that's an emphasis there. I think that led to the Harden deal as well.
Yeah, CP, I want to get your thoughts on James Harden now joining the Cavaliers. How do you think he'll fit in Cleveland?
Yeah, it's an interesting pickup for sure. We all know his prowess as a regular season performer and certainly one of the best players of this generation. I think it's going to be an interesting fit in terms of how he and Donovan Mitchell are able to orchestrate offensively. I was surprised to hear that Donovan Mitchell vouched to bring in James Harden into the mix here. So clearly Donovan Mitchell feels like those two guys can coexist in the backcourt. But I saw this breakup coming. You could see from last year with the struggles that Cleveland had, losing to the Pacers in the way that they did, that they were eventually going to shuffle the decks here a little bit to continue or keep their quote-unquote contender window open. And there was a lot of talk in terms of how effective the Garland and Mitchell combination would be offensively. It kind of seemed like when one guy was injured, the other guy would be playing well and vice versa. And then defensively with two short guards in the backcourt, it didn't really click well. On top of that, Evan Mobley, their star lottery pick, he hasn't really taken the offensive leap consistently that they had come to expect in order to really be a true contender. And so I expected this to happen. I think this is a precursor move to the LeBron James farewell tour, and we'll see what happens when these guys come playoff time.
Let's stick with the top of the Eastern Conference with the Celtics. So they acquire Nikola Vucevic from Chicago for Anthony Simmons, adding instead of subtracting here. So CP, what are your thoughts on that move for Boston?
Big pickup. You have to give a lot of credit to Brad Stevens and the way that they've been able to maneuver around their salary cap and the issues that they had coming into this season. This was supposed to be a gap year for the Celtics. They traded Kristaps Porzingis. They traded Drew Holiday. They lost their MVP caliber player in Jason Tatum. This was supposed to be a gap year, but instead they retooled. They got guys like Luka Garza. They had Neemias Keita playing very well. Their other veterans like Sam Hauser and Derek White, Peyton Pritchard still being there, the Celtics have been able to retool and truly be an Eastern Conference contender, led by the MVP caliber play of Jaylen Brown. But the pickup of Vucevic, that's pretty much that Porzingis slot, and they get a nice floor spacing, big man. They addressed their front court needs, getting an upgrade there on the offensive end. And so I give them a lot of credit for the way that they've been able to build this team. I think before the deadline at the buzzer, they were able to trade Chris Boucher to get from under the luxury tax. So they continue to compete while at the same time maintaining good cap flexibility as well. Great job by the Celtics.
Yeah. Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to concur with CP, but I'm going to add too that I think coming into the year, you know, it was expected that Boston would just continue to try to shed salary to pay less in the tax. And that assumption went along with the idea that they, didn't really care about competing. But credit to them for making their team better and caring about this season. And you could see how with Jaylen Brown up there, I think what's happening this year is just going to pay dividends for whenever Jason Tatum does come back. But credit to them for going for it, for not just shedding salary to shed salary, but getting a big man in Vucevic, who they obviously think can help them. They've upgraded their big man spot, and let's see how it all shakes out.
For sure. Let's go to the bottom of the Eastern Conference now. The Hornets acquire Kobe White and Mike Conley Jr. from the Bulls in exchange for Colin Sexton, Ousmane Dieng, and 3 second-round picks. Ian, I'm told that you've been all over Kobe White being on the move. You said the last 2 days that you expected the Bulls to move White because of his expiring contract. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Kobe White, it was going to be tough for Chicago to bring him back. I think he's going to command some attention as a free agent. So for Chicago, you have to do the best that you can. I thought maybe they could get a little more, but the idea that they were able to get a deal done and retain some assets, I think that I know that Chicago's taking a lot of heat right now, but I wonder what the next step is here for AK and the group, or maybe they have something up their sleeve that we're not thinking about. But I did think it was important for Chicago to get off of him, because they probably wouldn't have gotten anything for him if they reached free agency.
Sticking with the Bulls here, CP, I want to come to you on this one. The Bulls trade Ayo Dosunmu to the Timberwolves for Rob Dillingham, Leonard Miller, and 4 picks. Any thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen him in a Knicks uniform. He's a good player, shooting 45% from 3, good handles, and puts relentless pressure on the rim. I think that's an area of need for the Knicks, but the price tags seem to be a bit steep when you listen to the reports from Ian and others. And so for the Wolves, I think that was a big pickup for them. The point guard position was an area of need in terms of upgrading from Mike Conley over the years. They've tried to implement Dante DiVincenzo in that role. They did draft a Rob Dillingham, but those solutions just have not been working. So I think DeSumo is a nice upgrade for them. I like his mix with Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo in that backcourt. And so we'll see how they move going forward in a very competitive Western Conference.
For sure. I want to get both of your thoughts on this. Ian, I'll come to you first. The Wizards getting Anthony Davis from Dallas in an 8-player, 5-pick deal. What do you think, or what kind of impact do you think that Anthony Davis could have in Washington with Trae Young?
Yeah, obviously they sped things up there in Washington in terms of their process to build the team out. At one point last year, I thought it was going to be a much longer runway for the group, Michael Winger and the group, to build through the draft and to go through the phases of team building that you do when you're taking it slow. Obviously, there was no patience for that, because you pick up Anthony Davis, you pick up Trae Young. You still have flexibility even with those trades, but obviously you want to win next year, and it depends on their health. Health has been a question mark, certainly for Anthony Davis, but if healthy, that's a tough team. They have a lot of talent, and I don't know how it's going to coalesce, but I'm sure that Trae Young is motivated to shake that reputation that he developed in Atlanta from some people that he was not, a winning player. Anthony Davis certainly motivated as well. So yeah, I'm intrigued by the Wizards going for it, being aggressive, and just seeing how it works out.
Yeah, CP, what are your thoughts? Anthony Davis in Washington.
Yeah, I look at it threefold. As Ian said, I think it's a worthwhile gamble for the Wizards. The team has been a basement dweller for a number of years now. It's a worthwhile Hail Mary to make. Secondly, it's an indictment again on the Luka Doncic trade. When you think about what Nico Harrison did there in Dallas, I mean, you essentially traded Luka Doncic for Max Christie, Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, Marvin Bagley. You have 3 first-round picks and 3 seconds. I think that's a little bit tough there for a generational talent like Luka Doncic. But third, as someone who covers the Knicks, someone who is a Knicks fan, the idea that the Wizards are now going to have Trae Young there, you can already envision them sitting Anthony Davis for quite some time, and with the idea that the Wizards do owe the Knicks that conditional pick, and that they're essentially going to continue to tank with these 2 guys in their roster, I think the league has to look into this intentional tanking when you have picks and swaps involved in these negotiations that are essentially meaningless. This is the second time that this is going to happen with the Knicks. The first time happening when the Dallas Mavericks sat Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in the final game of their season to tank the pick that they owed the Knicks. They eventually got the number 10 pick and drafted Derek Lively. I think the league has to and will ultimately look into this, because it really renders these conditional picks as meaningless when you have teams out there intentionally sabotaging their season to keep the picks.
Valid point, CP. 2 more trades that I'll just quickly mention. The Pacers acquire Ivica Zubac from the Clippers, and the 76ers trade Jared McCain to the Thunder. Let's go out west, guys. You mentioned Kristaps Porzingis, CP, a little earlier in the show. He's been traded to the Warriors. You said on Twitter that you told your 7-year-old that Porzingis got traded. His reaction was, again, tough business. What else did your 7-year-old say? What's your reaction to Porzingis now joining the Warriors?
Yeah, we were going through all the trades, and he was absolutely astonished when he heard that. But I said, Porzingis, he's going to have to invest in an Airbnb instead of some physical real estate here because he's always on the move. But for the Warriors, I mean, to finalize this Jonathan Kuminga saga and to just end up with Porzingis in the deal when they were trying to extend their championship window, this seems to be a loss for the Warriors as it relates to the trade deadline and their hopes to compete in the West. For Jonathan Kuminga and the Hawks, look, I think it's an opportunity for him to extend his career, to show the basketball world who he is. He's been betting on himself and trying to prove himself for quite some time. And I thought the situation, the politics that he had to endure in Golden State was kind of unfair to him. So the Hawks get a guy they can gamble on and take a flyer on. But for the Warriors, I just don't see this improving their chances to compete. Given Porzingis' his lack of durability, the situation, the health impact that he's had, you can see he's lost considerable amount of weight. So it's just not clear how impactful he will be for them.
Yeah, we'll see how this one all shakes out. I love that reaction from your 7-year-old, though. That's awesome. Ian, let's go back to the Knicks. What's the latest on Josh Hart and what he's dealing with injury-wise?
Yeah, the ankle. I think it's not the same ankle that he was dealing with earlier in the year. So positive in that sense. But I don't think they're going to rush it. I'm sure Josh is going to rush it and try to get back as soon as he can. But I would assume Knicks are going to be conservative here with a player that's so important to them. I don't know the degree of the injury. But again, the idea that it's not the same one that it was earlier in the year, you don't think he'll be back for weeks and weeks. You don't think he'll be out for weeks and weeks and weeks. You think that, 2-3 weeks, he should be back.
Okay, definitely something to monitor there. CP, just quickly, I just want to get your thoughts too on Josh Hart's injury. Just, can you just speak to how important he is for this team? You talk about durability, you talk about this win streak that this team is on and moving forward, the different changes that they're making defensively. How important is it for the Knicks to have Josh Hart back as quickly as possible?
We opened up the show speaking on the trade that they made on the margin to acquire Jose Alvarado. That has been the Leon Rose Brock Aller special. It started with acquiring Derrick Rose in 2021. But you look at the Josh Hart trade, the trade that involved Cam Reddish and what that has done in terms of helping to change this franchise's fortunes. He's been one of their MVPs, Mr. Everything. On the rebounds, I'd call him my fast break point guard. Just being a leader, giving the Knicks that New York grit that they need to really be able to compete in the playoffs. But the durability has not been on his side. The two multiple ankle injuries, he has the knee injury. He still came in with the finger that he needs to get fixed. So I think Josh Hart needs to take his time here and get back when he can. But on the flip side, as we talk about the depth that the Knicks have has helped them. I was incredibly surprised to see Mohamed Diawara suit up and play in that game against the Denver Nuggets after being helped off the court after injuring his ankle against the Washington Wizards. But Mike Brown seems to be very high on him. It seems like he continues to get better in different ways for the Knicks as the season has progressed. And when you look at him, his size, his stature, the way he towers over people with that wingspan, I'm just very intrigued with the prospects of Mohamed Diawara. And so while Josh Hart recovers here, I'd look forward to seeing Mohamed Diawara, being implemented as the newest member of Wingstop. We'll see how he fares on Friday and Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see how he fares in this next stretch as we look ahead for the next rest of the schedule or the schedule moving forward before the All-Star break. They're in Detroit Friday, just as you mentioned, CP. Then Sunday, they're in Boston. On Tuesday, they host the Pacers. And Wednesday, they are in Philadelphia. Ian, how important is this stretch facing all teams in the East?
Yeah, I mean, this stretch to me is going to tell you something about the team more so than maybe the 5 of the 8 wins during this streak. This is mostly elite competition. And I want to point out, I think you have to give Mike Brown credit because he poured confidence into Landry Shamet from day one. He made it clear, even in the offseason, how much he wanted him back. And, you just see a player who didn't have a regular role last year. And you saw, the effects of that when he did get minutes and he played well in that Indiana series. But he was not utilized the way he's being utilized this year. And I think Landry Shamet, they're really going to lean on him in the absence of Josh Hart. And I think they're going to lean on him in general. I mean, Mike Brown stuck with him late in the Denver game, late in important moments of the Denver game with him hitting 3-point shots. And it just to me, it shows you that when a coach is fully behind you and allows you to kind of be yourself, the results are usually good if you're a player that has Landry Shamet's talent.
Yeah, Shamet 40% from three in that win over the Nuggets. CP, who is the Knicks' biggest competition in the East right now?
Yeah, it's no doubt the Detroit Pistons, number one in the East right now, and a team that the Knicks are going to see on Friday, and a team who circles the Knicks on that schedule. They look at the Knicks as the measuring stick. They hear all of the predictions and all the prediction markets picking the Knicks to still win the East, despite the fact that the Pistons are number one. So they carry a chip on their shoulder. As I said earlier in the show, they have improved tremendously across the board, across their roster, and this is going to be a tough matchup for the Knicks. I want to see the Knicks go out there. You know, one thing that they've been trending positively on is that their turnovers, they've been able to keep their turnovers a bit manageable and not allowing teams to hurt them in terms of points in transition. They're going to need to do that and take care of the ball tremendously here against the Detroit Pistons, because that is how they feast and really open up leads, is by getting stops. They're physical, they force the issue, and they're going to force you to put the ball on the floor. And then once they get it to Cade Cunningham, it's showtime from there. So the Knicks are going to really have to take care of the ball here as they head into hostile territory against a tough Detroit Pistons team.
Yeah, and we'll get a first look on how Jose Alvarado can impact this Knicks team during this stretch. CP, what are you looking for from Alvarado in his first game as a Knick and also his first game at the Garden against the Pacers?
Pesky. Hounding Cade Cunningham, because, you know, one of the tricky things with this matchup is, yes, we can say that put OG Anunoby on him right away, but Cade is savvy. He has that cerebral tendencies that the superstars have. And so it's going to be tricky because you don't want to see OG Anunoby pick up foul trouble early. So the Knicks are going to have to throw multiple defenders at Cade Cunningham in waves. And look, even though Jose Alvarado is a smaller guard, he could be one of those guys that has to hound Cade Cunningham on the perimeter. I'm also intrigued by the matchup with St. John's own Dennis Jenkins. He's been a guy who's gotten the best of the Knicks. He's gotten the best of Tyler Kolek in that matchup. So that is where I want to see a guy like a Jose Alvarado who can kind of handle that pressure, handle the physicality, and provide a bit more resistance when you're going up against those downhill threats at the guard spot that the Detroit Pistons have.
Yeah, Ian, what are you looking for from Alvarado?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Mike Brown implements him in the rotation. Obviously, it'll be a little bit different with Miles McBride out and Josh Hart out, but I'm curious to see when Mike Brown used him in what situations, what the downstream effect of Alvarado being here and the minutes that he's going to get has. And he's obviously going to play right away. He was going to get rotation minutes regardless of whether Miles McBride was healthy or not. So there was no connection between the McBride injury and the Alvarado trade. Knicks, feeling strongly about Alvarado for a while now. They get their guy, so they think obviously he can make an impact right away. I wonder if it's going to take him a little bit just to get acclimated to the system, get acclimated to playing in your hometown, which is not always easy. You're getting I don't want to say bothered, but you're getting ticket requests from everybody under the sun, so it can be tricky. But I do think that once he gets a few games under his belt, you're going to see the Jose Alvarado that the Knicks were looking for when they sent out those two picks.
Yeah, one fun fact on Jose Alvarado, he helped Christ the King win the 2017 SNY Invitational, and now he's the first Invitational alum to play for the Knicks, so that's super cool. Before we go, guys, Ian, I'll start with you. I just want to ask, what's your overall assessment of the trade deadline for the Knicks?
I think they did what they set out to do. They were not going to be in those Giannis talks in a big way because they just don't have the assets to be in those talks. And obviously Milwaukee deciding to hold on to Giannis at the deadline anyway. They had a conversation with Memphis about Jaren Jackson Jr. So Giannis was not the only big name player on the market that the Knicks at least checked in on. And they end up with, I think what was their goal, their realistic goal was all along was to get Jose Alvarado. Maybe they also wanted to snag a big. I know New Orleans was asking for a lot for Yves Missy, but certainly this was the plan. They executed the plan, and so let's see how it works out moving forward. But again, got to give the front office credit for the machinations of creating more money and enough space between their team salary and the second apron to be able to sign another player right away.
Yeah. CP, what's your overall trade deadline assessment for the Knicks?
Yeah, similar to Ian, it's on the margins where Leon and Brock Aller do their best work. So this type of move was expected, and they bring in some value here. And look, going from Gershon Yabusele to literally any player will be an upgrade. And, that's not no knock on him. It just didn't work out well here. But I think now with the Miles McBride injury, this Jose Alvarado acquisition is even more important for the Knicks. And if I could just add in one thing before we close.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Ian Yossi Gazan, as you mentioned, I would encourage everyone to follow him, the Third Apron podcast newsletter. He just released a newsletter in terms of potential buyout candidates. Just want to get your thoughts on some of these because they couldn't afford some of these guys like a Matisse Thybulle, the Chris Boucher, Kevin Love. He also has here Nicholas Batum, Kyle Anderson, Kevon Looney. So I look at potential wings, potential backup bigs. Just want to get your thoughts on any of those, or if you heard, the Knicks' interest in any of those guys potentially.
Yeah, that's where my mind goes. The wings and the bigs that you mentioned. I haven't heard any specific names in terms of Knicks' interest. Going back to training camp, I know they were trying to entice some bigs to come to training camp with them because they said that we're going to be able to sign somebody in the middle of the season. So they were trying to get some veteran bigs in the gym with the idea of creating that relationship and then having a chance to sign them at this point in the season. So because of that, maybe they lean more towards the bigs, and Kevon Looney, longtime professional, can certainly help you if you needed it. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly where their mind is in terms of these players and who else may become available.
All right, CP, thanks for bringing that up. Great question. And that's a wrap for us, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of The Putback with Ian Begley's Trade Deadline Special. Ian, you're the best, CP. Great insight as always. I really hope the two of you can get some sleep tonight. I know this has been a really long week for both of you. Thank you all for watching us, for our SNY viewers, for our Knicks Fan TV viewers watching us on that stream as well. We will be back with another episode soon. And once again, thank you all so much for watching.